It is now time for question period. I recognize the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
Thank you, Speaker. Good morning. This question is for the Premier. Sault Ste. Marie is bracing for 1,000 workers to be let go from Algoma Steel. The community cannot handle 1,000 more job seekers. The Premier is saying to 1,000 people that they are going to lose their jobs, and apparently that is just a sacrifice he is willing to make. The Premier handed $100 million over to the big bosses with no strings attached. So let me be clear, is the Premier okay with 1,000 people losing their jobs in Sault Ste. Marie?
I recognize the Minister of Economic Development.
Speaker, the $100 million loan that our government provided was critical to saving as many jobs as possible. They are open today because we put a $100 million loan in. The CEO's own words, we simply could not survive without the financing that the government provided. They're here today to fight for tomorrow, and we are fighting along with them. We are working with them to create new line for plate steel as countries around the world are looking for new steel. We are working with them because we're investing $200 billion in infrastructure. Those I-beams should be and will be made in Sault Ste. Marie. So today, the $100 million loan that we invested kept them alive long enough now to fight the future, and that's what we'll do together with them.
Back to the Leader of the Opposition.
$100 million spent to lose 1,000 jobs. That's what I call a bad deal. A bad deal, and 1,000 people, 1,000 families are the casualties
Minister
of that
Small
terrible
Business
deal.
will come to order.
The Premier keeps saying he's had nothing that he could do about it. But I got to say, I feel like the Premier gave up a long time ago. It was him and his government that reduced Canadian content requirements for transit projects from 25% to 10%. He is the one who set us up to be more vulnerable than ever to a tariff and a trade war. So back to the Premier. Why are you undermining these workers and our manufacturing sector just when they needed our help more?
I recognize the Minister of Economic Development.
Bill Slater, the president of Local 2724, said they knew these layoffs were coming because of the introduction of the electric arc furnaces, which will make Algoma more efficient and able to hire more people later. But President Trump's tariffs accelerated those losses. Look, $100 million loan is invested that kept the company alive. They're there today, open today, because of that $100 million loan. We are going to join them in fighting the fights of tomorrow, where we can put this plate steel line in. Think of the European Union spending almost $2 trillion more on defense. Nobody in the world has enough steel to supply for that. That's why they're going to need Algoma. We'll be there when they hire to. Once we build that new line in Algoma, we'll be right beside them as they hire people back into Algoma to fight those fights.
To the Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Speaker, to know that this government was working behind everyone's backs to ship good manufacturing jobs to other countries is a complete betrayal of Ontario workers. And now, in the middle of a trade war, it's like the Premier has left us exposed, and he's okay with that. He's like the Titanic is sinking, but we saved a few people. Well, my goodness. You saved a few rich people. You handed over $100 million with no strings attached, and 1,000 families are looking at losing their jobs now, right before the holidays. The Premier made a choice. He decided to sacrifice 1,000 jobs in Sault Ste. Marie. So how can the Premier justify such a terrible deal, losing 1,000 jobs for $100 million?
Back to the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade.
I'm going to say it one more time. $100 million loan kept them open today. They're there today because that money was put in. Speaker, the member opposite should have a very serious read on the Buy Ontario Act, which sadly they're not supporting. It ensures that Ontario-made steel is prioritized in all our government procurements. We've been very clear from the start. Every major project in this country should be built with Ontario-made steel. That includes pipelines, shipbuilding, and every major infrastructure project. We are investing $200 billion in infrastructure. Algoma should be and will be, with our help, building I-beams, and all of that will be used in bridges and roads and construction in Ontario with Ontario-made steel and new Ontario employees when these lines are built, because they survive today.
Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Speaker, they didn't survive.
Wait,
1,000 people,
Niagara West will come to order.
people lost their jobs. So anyways, Ontarians are actually struggling to make ends meet. The cost of basic groceries is rising every day. I mean, we know it because we're putting groceries back on the shelves at the checkout counter, and we know that a record number of people are visiting food banks. Families are doing everything right. They're doing everything right, but they just can't seem to get ahead under this government. And it is about choices, Speaker. It is about choices that this government is making, and they are making the wrong choices. They chose their friends and their insiders over and over and over again, and instead of Ontarians. Can the Premier explain why he has decided to put his insiders and his friends ahead of working people when handing out the Skills Development Fund?
I recognize the Minister of Finance.
Madam, I think I heard the word affordability in there. You know, I think about the $12 billion that we announced in the fall economic statement, putting money back in the pockets of the hardworking people of Ontario. And, Madam Speaker, where was the Leader of the Opposition and her members on her team when we cut the gas tax? Did they vote for or against? Against. And when we made it permanent, did they vote for or against? Against. And when we had the one integrated fare, saving $1,600 for transit riders, did they vote for or against? Against. Madam Speaker, time and again, the Highway 412 and 418, the tolls, did they vote for or against? Against. It's a trick question. So, Madam Speaker, the bottom line is this government has been working since day one to make life more affordable for the hardworking people and men and women of this province.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Speaker, I understand why the Premier doesn't want to get up and answer these questions. Yeah. Because this was a fund that was meant to connect people to good-paying jobs, right? It was supposed to grow our workforce. And instead, where does it go? Your family dentist, your favorite nightclub owner, your campaign manager, right? Your friends, the campaign insiders. Those are the only people that this government is working for, while Ontarians, including those 1,000 people who got pink slips in Sault Ste. Marie, are paying the price. When is this Premier going to stop holding the line and fire his Minister of Labour?
I recognize the Premier.
Well, Madam Speaker, the only person that should get a pink slip is the Leader of the Opposition. She's the only person that should get a pink slip. And I'll tell you, Madam Speaker, all I can tell you, there's 1,080,000 more people working now than when we inherited the bankrupt company from the Liberals and NDP.
Order.
55,000 people. You talk about 1,000 people that we were saving their future, actually, as they get ramped up, and they're going to come back to have a good-paying job. But 55,000 people last month alone had gainful employment because of our policies, because we reduced the burden of taxation off the backs of people and the backs of companies to create opportunities. My Minister of Economic Development is traveling all around the world, and every single time he comes back, he has pages of multi-billion-dollar investments. That's what the world is seeing. We're open for business. We've been talking with our great Minister of Finance. No matter if it's a pension funds or other funds, they're saying this is the greatest place in the world.
Back to the Leader of the Opposition.
Manufacturing jobs are at the lowest levels we've seen in this province since 1976. This premier thinks he can pull the wool over people's eyes. They are so brazen that they don't even manage to change up the cast of characters who benefit from their decisions. People are getting really tired of watching the premier's circle of elites get ahead while they are falling further and further and further behind every day. We have seen what you get with this government. They only help the people who help them. So what is it going to take for this government to start paying attention to what regular Ontarians actually need?
Back to the Premier. Order! Order! Minister of Economic Development.
I'm sorry, boss.
Speaker, you've heard the story before many times that under the Liberals we saw 300,000 manufacturing jobs leave the province. We saw that. Now we know that we have 1 million more people working in Ontario than the day we got elected. And if you look very carefully at the statistics, there are more people working in manufacturing today than the day we took office. In fact, in the last 4 months alone, 25,000 new manufacturing jobs have been created. So I understand what your number that you're twisting. But if you look at where that number comes from, it's because we've added 85,000 AI jobs. We've added 400,000 tech jobs. We've added jobs in all kinds of sectors, including 25,000 new jobs in manufacturing in 4 months alone.
Recognize the leader of the third party.
Thank you very much, Speaker. My question to the Premier. Yesterday, my daughter forwarded me the Minister of Education's letter to parents. And you know, the government never ceases to amaze me. It is probably the most pathetic thing I've read and seen in a long time. So, after almost 8 years in government, they're going to hire, get this folks, a two-person panel to fix the problem that they created. 8 years of larger class sizes, 8 years of starving special education, 8 years of ignoring the mental health crisis that's in our schools. And the Minister of Education's solution is a two-person panel. We don't need a two-person panel. We just need more qualified adults in our schools to help our kids. So when's the Premier going to make that happen?
The member for Markham Unionville.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the question. Speaker, our government is restoring accountability in an education system that for so long, that was allowed to drift without direction or responsibility. While the previous Liberal government, supported by the NDP, closed over 600 schools, we are taking a very different approach. Instead of walking away from communities, we are investing $23 billion over the next 10 years to build, repair, modernize schools so students can learn in safe, high-quality environments. We have been clear from day one. Students come first. That means making sure every dollar is spent where it belongs, in classroom, not on waste, dysfunction, or political games that have plagued too many school boards for years. So while the opposition continues to defend the status quo and fail trustees who waste money, we will continue restoring the accountability and building an education system focused on student success.
Third party.
That wasn't even a semblance of an answer. So we don't need a panel. We just need more adults in our schools. And anybody can tell you that class sizes are too big. They've starved special education. There's a mental health crisis in our school that this government is just walking past. Schools are not safe places to learn or to work. The solution is simple: more qualified adults in our schools to help our kids. With smaller class sizes, right? With special education needs, with mental health supports, all to fix the problem that they made. So when is the Premier going to stand up for kids and make that happen?
I recognize the member from Markham Unionville.
Madam Speaker, parents expect an education system which is focused on student success, not one consumed by chaos and mismanagement. when trustees waste public money or ignore their responsibilities, will not hesitate to act. Waiting years for accountability is not acceptable for the families who need answers now. At the same time, we are making historic investments to improve learning environments across Ontario. Record core education funding increases up to $30.28 billion, more than $23 billion over the next 10 years to support school construction, renewal, and improvement. And my message and our ministry's message is simple. We are putting students first in restoring accountability in every corner of the education system.
Back to the Leader of the Third Party.
So, Speaker, I'm proud of our record. Learning to age 18, higher graduation rates, smaller class sizes, full-day kindergarten.
Government
a
House
government
Leader
that actually cared about education. But we're not talking about us. We're talking about you. And yesterday, the Minister of Education said small class sizes are really not important in student achievement and success. Give your head a shake. More kids,
Government
less
House
time.
Leader will come to
Read
order.
it, guys. Read my lips. More kids, less
Niagara
time.
West will come
There's
to order.
only so many hours in the day. So when will the Premier do the simple math and make sure we have enough adults in our schools, to qualified adults, to take care of our kids? When are you going to stand up for kids? Get out of your seat.
I recognize.
Madam Speaker, read my lips. You closed 600 schools. 600 schools. You fired thousands of teachers. We've hired 9,000 educators. 9,000. We spent $16 billion on building new schools across the province. $3.6 billion to build 139 schools. You voted for it. You voted to close 600 schools, fired thousands of teachers. That is hypocrisy at its best. At its best. Madam Speaker, we're setting a record.
Premier, you have to withdraw.
I'm trying to withdraw. We ended up adding another $2 billion to the education, financing up to $39 billion. They've never seen that in their entire lives. They destroyed the school system. That's what they did. We're improving it. We're actually teaching kids about STEM. You want to teach them about every wacko thing, left-wing radical thing?
Back to the Leader of the Third Party. Okay, folks, I'm going to start. Okay, member for Ottawa Centre will come to order. Ottawa Centre will come to order. I'm going to start naming people. The next person that I have to call out will be named. The Leader of the Third. I recognize the member for Orleans.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and Merry Christmas, Premier. On March 27th, the Premier met privately with the CEO of Loblaws and Metro. 5 days later, he met with the CEO of Sobeys. And just weeks after those closed-door meetings, his government introduced a bill that would open the door to reward points expiring once again. A change that no Ontario family asked for, a change he didn't campaign on, a change that doesn't protect anyone other than big corporate interests. Madam Speaker, families are already getting crushed by high food prices. The last thing they need is a government opening the door to giving the grocery giants power to strip away their reward points before Christmas. So, Madam Speaker, can the Premier explain why, immediately after meeting the grocery giants, his government introduced a law that would let them claw back reward points?
I recognize the Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery and Procurement.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And I have a recommendation for that member. There's a great book out there you should read. It's called The Boy Who Cried Wolf. I suggest you read that book because it tells a story about kids who tell falsities, and later, when there is a real emergency, people don't listen to them. I've been very clear in this House over and over, day after day, telling you that the rewards points are not going to be touched. Full stop. We're bringing in more consumer protections to support the people of Ontario. Speaker, We will be bringing in more protections so that people, if their points are cancelled, if there's a dispute, they now have a dispute resolution, and they will actually, the company involved will be forced to get back to them and rectify the situation, or to at least let them know why the points have expired. That is more consumer protection that sits on the books today. You need to support this bill.
Back to the member for Orleans.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a book recommendation for the Premier, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Madam Speaker, the legislation is crystal clear. Cabinet can meet in secret and write regulations that allow reward points to expire. There is no public vote. There is no debate in the House. Just a quiet, closed-door Cabinet meeting with the Premier's ministers where they can open the door for companies to wipe out a family's hard-earned reward points. So, Madam Speaker, I'll ask again, why is the Premier giving himself the power to take away the protections around reward points for Ontario's families if he's not planning to use them?
Back to the Minister of Public and Service Business Delivery and Procurement.
Thank you, Speaker. And again, the member opposite has to recognize that your claims are totally out of touch with reality. There's no secret. If there's any secret meetings, then I don't know why we're discussing it in the House. It's clearly not secret. There's no secret meetings. We are bringing in legislation to support consumers. We are bringing in more protections for consumers. And if we want to talk about all the great things we've done for consumers over the past, I can certainly touch on that. The previous minister, who sits 2 seats away from me, Minister of Infrastructure currently, and Minister of Environment, did a great job in bringing consumer protections to this province. We banned nosies, which was a great success for the people of Ontario. We brought in Bill 194, strengthening cybersecurity protections. So, Speaker, we've done a lot for consumers. We're going to continue to stand up for consumers. I would hope the opposition would stop crying wolf and support this bill.
Back to the member for Orleans.
Madam Speaker, I can tell you the opposition, and I'm sure the media, are very happy to learn that Cabinet meetings will now be open to the public. Madam Speaker, families don't need clever talking points. They need the truth. Stop the obfuscating. Stop the spinning. Stop the closed doors process. Give Ontario families...
I'll ask the member to withdraw.
I withdraw. Give Ontario families a straight and clear answer. Madam Speaker, to the Premier, will you commit right now that you will not use this new Cabinet power to allow companies to let reward points expire with the passage of time? And if you won't commit to it today, tell us why.
I recognize the Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery and Procurement.
Thank you, Speaker. Again, I am committing in the House, as I have for the last several days, that we are not touching the expiry of rewards points. Full stop. I don't know what the member doesn't understand about that, but let's talk about affordability. Let's talk about all the issues that the Liberals have voted against. You voted against cutting the gas tax and saving the people of Ontario money. You voted against the low-income tax credit to support low-income families. You voted against the One Fare Pass, which helped commuters every single day. You voted against the ODSP inflation increase and 5% one-time increase.
Member for
you
Don
voted against
Valley
freezing
North
driver's license fees.
You
voted against license plate sticker fee reductions, which we eliminated. You voted against dropping the tolls on the 412 and the 418. When we talk about supporting the families of Ontario getting through these tougher times, this government stands with the people, unlike the government which talks a big game and doesn't deliver.
Question. I recognize the member for University Rosedale.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Parents from Hayden Park Secondary School are here today in the legislature. They fear their school is going to be closed because the TDSB has informed them there will be no enrolment of kids in grade 9 and now grade 10. They've had no answers and no explanation as to why. Hayden Park is one of the very few schools that focuses on special education, helping our most vulnerable kids. My question is to the Premier. Can this government work to keep Hayden Park Secondary School open?
I recognize the Government House Leader.
Speaker, the Minister, the Parliamentary Assistant, the Government has been very clear. Everything we're doing in the education system for that school or every other school, it's all about putting students, parents and teachers first. It's putting real accountability and real results. The Minister has stood in this place in regards to the supervisors, the review that they're doing. Everything's about strengthening the system. appreciate the fact that there are members from one particular school here today. Everything we're doing, regardless of where you live, whether you live in the GTA or any other corner of Ontario, it's all about ensuring that boards or that school boards have the opportunity to succeed. The minister stood up, talked about accountability, talked about transparency, the reasons why trustees were removed.
Response.
But at the end of the day, no matter whether it's this school or any other school, it's all about putting parents and the classroom first.
Back to the member for University of Rosedale.
This issue is very important. I'd really like the Premier to answer this question. Every school board is not being set up for success. They have seen massive funding cuts under this government year in and year out, and special education is seeing the worst cuts. We just got the EQAO results yesterday, and it shows that our schools are failing our kids who are in special education. They are not meeting learning outcomes in math, in reading or writing. Properly investing in schools like Hayden Park, a school that specialises in special education, is the answer. My question is to the Premier. Can this government commit to keeping Hayden Park Secondary School open?
Back to the member from Markham Unionville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The facts are clear. Every single year our government has been in office, we have increased education funding, including a more than 36% increase to special education funding that has helped hire over 4,000 additional educational assistants to support the most vulnerable learners. But increasing funding alone isn't enough when the school board trustees continue to fail students. We have seen examples across Ontario where mismanagement and infighting has diverted attention away from the special education and classroom support. It is unacceptable. We will continue to invest, continue to support teachers, continue to hold school boards accountable so that every dollar we invest goes to supporting students in the classroom.
Recognize the member for Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to go back to classrooms. This week, and I know we're all worried about what's holding kids back. And that's what the minister says he's worried about. We're all worried about that. This week there was a parents' forum in my riding of Kingston and the Islands. And one of the things they talked about, maybe it's evacuations. This is when a kid becomes violent and you have to move all the students out of the classroom for 1 or 2 hours before they can come back. And it happens about once per week on average in my riding. And maybe that's disturbing education. Another thing that came up in the parents' forum, many of the kids, the little kids, they're seeing that something's going to happen, and they try to prevent problems. They try to prevent things from escalating to violence. People are generally good, and even the little kids, they know when something's wrong, and they try to fix the situation. So people are basically good. And so I want to ask the minister, you're spending money on a lot of things. Minister, why can't we have more adults per student in our schools?
Back to the member from Markham Unionville.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the questions. To address rising violence in our school communities, our government has increased funding for school safety initiatives to the highest in Ontario history, including more funding to hire psychologists, social workers, child youth workers, and education assistants. They are adults to enhance direct service for students. The rise in school violence also coincide with the short-sighted decision for many school boards across the province, starting in 2017 to end the school resource officer program in schools. This is why our government has introduced measures that will require school boards to work with police services to develop school resources officer and youth engagement programs that will help foster positive relations between students and law enforcement while making schools safer.
Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you, Speaker. It's not working. At the same parent forum that we had in Kingston and the Islands, we had some educational assistants, and one of them just showed everybody the scars on her hands from students, little kids gouging them. They're suffering physical as well as verbal abuse, Speaker, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I know the minister realizes this, What's going to happen? And, you know, our kids are about the same age, the Minister of Education and I. What's going to happen to all these little kids who are violent in the classroom and disrupting the education of everybody? Because there's not enough adults to supervise them. What's going to happen when they grow up? What's going to happen to our society when all these kids grow up? And so I really want a good answer from the minister. Why won't you increase the adult-to-kid ratio in our schools right away?
Back to the member for Markham Unionville.
Madam Speaker, thank you again for the question. As I mentioned earlier, those short-sighted trustees remove adults from schools. They are police officers. So short-sighted decisions made by school boards to remove school resource officer programs have made schools less safe for students and teachers as well. They are adults. The teachers are adults. When they remove the school resources officer, even the adults are in danger. We need to remove politics from classroom and focus on policies that will help students and teachers save. Working with police services through Student Resource Officer Program helps build relationship between youth and police. Activity promotes positive behavior and create a culture of mutual respect that will help students and teachers save.
Response. Recognize the member for Thornhill.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the hardworking Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. Amid global economic uncertainty and the trade disruptions caused by President Trump's tariffs, Ontario must look for new ways and new markets to grow our trading relationships. The supply chains and many Ontario businesses have long relied upon are shifting, and with that change must come a proactive strategy. A few weeks ago, I had the very great privilege of attending the first Ontario Together Trade Fund recipient announcement in my riding of Thornhill. Here. This fund is a key pillar in the $30 billion tariff relief and supports our government has put forward to protect Ontario workers and businesses. Speaker, can the minister please tell the House more about how our government is protecting businesses and workers across this province?
Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade.
Speaker, we have a $150 million Ontario Trade Together Fund that is enabling businesses to make investments to reshore supply chains, diversify export markets, and bolster interprovincial trade. Now, it was great to be with the member from Thornhill a couple of weeks ago to celebrate 3 companies in her riding. Together, we announced the 3 of the first 8 recipients. Burnco Manufacturing, a great steel fabricator there, $8 million investment, 75 new jobs, 215 jobs protected. They're now going to be able to reduce dependence on the U.S. market and support Canadian suppliers. Healy Medical, health producer here in her riding, $5.7 million investment. They will reshore production from China. Litar, an aircraft telecom component maker, $2.8 million investment.
Response.
They are establishing a facility and reshoring their operations from the United States. Together, Speaker, we're protecting Ontario.
Back to the member for Thornhill.
Thank you, Speaker, and it was great to join the minister to announce these important investments in my riding. Ontario manufacturers have literally built our province into the economic powerhouse it is today. From steel and aluminum to lumber and critical minerals, Ontario is known around the world for producing the goods the global economy depends upon. But amid growing uncertainty and shifting export markets, small and medium-sized Ontario businesses, the backbone of our economy, are feeling the pressure to adapt and compete. Speaker, can the minister please share why it's so important that our government launch these programs like the Ontario Together Trade Fund to help these businesses succeed in a changing global economy?
Back to the Minister of Economic Development.
Thank you, Speaker. We stand at a very defining moment for Ontario's economy, with President Trump taking direct aim at very specific sectors. The Ontario Together Trade Fund is helping Ontario businesses protect jobs, grow our trade capacity with others, and stay competitive amidst all this uncertainty. So we announced the first round of the OTTF. Those 8 companies that we announced are investing $120 million. That's the confidence that these companies are showing in the province of Ontario. Now, we are making a $16.5 million investment in those projects. Speaker, they are creating over 300 new jobs in Ontario and protecting 1,200 jobs. This is a once-in-a-generation threat that we are fighting together to protect Ontario.
Question. I recognize the member for Humber River Black Creek.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Premier. Speaker, don't ever let anyone tell you that miracles can't happen. Because after these many long, difficult years of construction and delays, the Finch West LRT is finally opening this Sunday. We're all happy about it. But, Speaker, it hasn't been an easy road for the people along Finch, and I think they deserve something special on day one, something to help them celebrate and thank them for their patience. Will the government work with the City of Toronto to ensure that rides on the Finch West LRT are free on opening day this Sunday?
I recognize the Minister of Transportation.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. But I'd like to remind the member that as a part of the Toronto-Ontario New Deal, we are covering operating expenses for the Finch West LRT, Madam Speaker. That was a commitment we made as a government, as a part of the Minister of Finance's deal with the City of Toronto, including record and historic investments into the City of Toronto. Billions of dollars to support the construction of public transit all across the city, millions of dollars in support to make transit more affordable, like launching programs, One Fare, the extension of that just 2 days ago to for an additional 2 years, saving commuters over $1,600 a year, Madam Speaker. So we're committed to continuing our investments into public transit. Thankfully, we've got a government that wants to build and get these projects done, unlike the members opposite who have voted against continuing construction on the Finch West LRT.
Back to the member for Humber River Black Creek. Back to the member.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the opposition votes against the government's budget because it's so full of bad things. And in fact, if the minister actually read his own budget, he'd vote against it too. But moving on. Speaker, when Toronto Subway Line 1 extension opened in 2017, rides were free for all to enjoy. Historically, it's always been this way. So why not now? Speaker, the people along Finch have endured years of nightmare traffic and even worse during the construction of the LRT. They deserve a break, and that important gesture would be a sign of respect for their patience and a big draw on day one. So I ask you again, no excuses, let's get it done. Will you work with the City of Toronto to ensure that rides on the Finch West LRT are free on opening day this Sunday?
Back to the Minister of Transportation.
Madam Speaker, I'll ask that member who is the MPP in Toronto to look at the deal that the government made with the City of Toronto with respect to transit funding and operational funding for lines like the Finch and Eglinton, Madam Speaker, as well as the historic investments that we've made. That member's record on public transit and that party's record on public transit is unfortunately very disappointing, whether it is the Finch West LRT they voted against, the Eglinton West extension that goes into that member's own riding he voted against, or the Scarborough subway extension. For 15 years, the Liberal government ignored the people of Scarborough. But we're investing in places like Scarborough. We're building the Ontario line that's going to move 400,000 people every single day. We've got record investments into public transit, and it's a shame that the NDP and Liberals don't support our investments into public transit. So, Madam Speaker, we're going to continue to work towards delivering these projects. Finch West is a huge milestone, and we're excited for the people of Finch.
I recognize the member for Beaches, East York.
Speaker. Water is a human right and was officially declared as such by the United Nations General Assembly in 2010. Everyone is entitled to safe, accessible and affordable drinking water. And yet the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks is refusing the Auditor General's recommendations in her recent report to analyze our current lead in drinking water standard. At present, Ontarians are being exposed to double the Health Canada level of 5 parts per billion. Officials at the ministry met back in 2021 to discuss reducing the province's lead level of 10 ppb to the federal standard of 5. Apparently, consultations were in the works. However, surprise, surprise, nothing is happening. My question to the Premier, when will he clean out his ears, listen to experts, and give children in Ontario safe drinking water?
Response, I recognize the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Beaches East York for the question. I can say on behalf of our government that we're proud of the fact that Ontario's drinking water is among the safest and most well-protected in the world. And the numbers speak for themselves. 99.9% of drinking water tests from municipal residential drinking water systems meet the drinking water quality standards. 99.9%. 99.6% of drinking water test results from non-municipal year-round residential systems meet the standards, and 99.7% of drinking water tests from systems serving facilities such as schools and health care centres meet the standards. Our comprehensive legislation and strong monitoring, reporting and enforcement systems ensure that our drinking water is always held to Ontario's highest safety standards, so people can always feel confident when they turn on their taps, whether at home, in the workplace or at school. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Back to the member for Beaches East York.
Speaker, we all know, or at least I thought we did, that lead is a neurotoxin, which makes its way into our drinking water when through pipes and plumbing are corroded. It is especially harmful in our vulnerable populations, including children, resulting in reduced IQ, neurodevelopmental problems in adolescents, and other health risks like cancer, kidney harm, and cognitive decline in adults. On June 11, 2021, an analysis by the Investigative Journalism Bureau at U of T revealed that 9% of all lead tests in Ontario's schools and daycares exceeded the federal safety guidelines of 5 ppb. My question to the Premier, Speaker, why will you not lower the provincial safety level for lead like British Columbia and Manitoba already have and keep children in Ontario safe?
Back to the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, the members should know that once again Ontario is leading all other provinces. Ontario actually has the most comprehensive provincial testing regime for lead in drinking water in the entire country. We require every fixture used to prepare food or provide drinking water to our children in schools, private schools, and child care centres to be tested for lead. Lead testing was required to be completed by 2020 for elementary schools and for child care centres by January 1st, 2022. And then for secondary schools the same date. The facilities are also required to flush their plumbing on a daily or weekly basis, depending on the most recent results from fixture testing. Where lead exceeds the drinking water quality standard, facility owners, such as school boards and owners of private schools and child care centres, must take immediate corrective actions to protect users and our children. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Question. I recognize the member for Mississauga, Aaron Mills.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Solicitor General. Families in my riding of Mississauga Aaron Mills tells me they are deeply concerned about repeat violent offenders being released back into our communities only to commit more crimes. They want to feel safe. Speaker, they are looking to their government for actions to strengthen public safety and hold offenders accountable. Speaker, our government has been working hard to address these very important concerns. We added 300 new officers to Beale Region Police. Just last week, we introduced the Keeping Criminals Behind Bars Act 2025. This legislation includes bold measures that build on our ongoing work to protect communities in our province. Speaker, can the Solicitor General tell the House how this bill, if passed, will help protect victims and keep dangerous and repeat offenders off the street?
I recognize the Solicitor General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It was an honour to rise in the House last week and to table the Keeping Criminals Behind Bars Act. And I want to thank my friend for standing up for his police service, the Peel Regional Police Service, every day. It's a flagship in Ontario, and that member is an example of someone that understands what it means to have a great police service. Madam Speaker, the member is correct. We came forward with a bold bill, but it is not new to Ontarians because it talks about protecting Ontario. And we made a fundamental announcement as part of this bill that for the first time we're going to insist that there be a cash security deposit for people that are leaving our jails as determined by the courts. And the reason is, Madam Speaker, because we want a deterrent. We want these people to understand you're not part of the 99.9% that want to be lawful. You're people that need to put up a deposit so you don't do it again.
Back to the member for Mississauga, Erin Mills.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you for the Solicitor General for the important update. Public safety is a top priority for families in my riding of Mississauga, Erin Mills. For too long, the broken bail system has allowed violent and repetitive offenders back on the street even within few hours, putting families at risk and wreaking havoc in our communities. Speaker, our government is saying enough is enough. We are demonstrating leadership and delivering on a promise to fix the broken bail system and hold offenders accountable. Speaker, could the Solicitor General provide further details on what measures our government is taking to protect Ontario communities and crack down on criminals?
Back to the Solicitor General.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm proud to be part of a government led by Premier Ford that protects Ontario. And one thing that we did is when the Associate Minister and I went to Kananaskis at the FPT meeting, we advocated for the federal government to move forward with meaningful bail reform. And you know what, Madam Speaker? I think they're listening because they tabled some bills that I hope gets passed. Madam Speaker, when we said we were going to be unprecedented in building more spaces in our correctional system, we were, and we're transparent about it. We said we would put 1,000 new spaces in the system. We're going to exceed that in Thunder Bay, in Niagara. We're going to do it in Quinte. We're going to do it out in Kemptville. We're going to do it in Brockville. We're doing it in Toronto. These 1,000+ spaces will ensure that if somebody breaks the law, guess what? I got room for them.
Recognize the member for Thunder Bay, Superior North.
Thank you, Speaker. The Lakehead Regional Conservation Authority manages what is the largest watershed in Ontario. They do an incredible job dealing with flood control, have a great organization, and issue permits within 5 days. The government has the absurd plan to merge the Lakehead Authority with the Lake Huron Authority, completely unconnected to our northern watershed and 1,600 kilometres away. Will the Premier stop this amalgamation and keep the LRCA as a standalone conservation authority?
I recognize the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks.
Madam Speaker, I thank the member for the question. I can assure this House that with our plan for the transformation of conservation authorities into several regional watershed-based authorities, no community will be left behind. What is not changing is the funding model. What is not changing is the municipal governance model. What is not changing is the ability to protect the core mandate, to pursue the core mandate. That means protecting people and property from natural hazards. That means flood prevention. That means the watershed protection that is essential. And that means sharing resources equally across Ontario. So just as no community currently served by a conservation authority will not continue to be served by a conservation authority, no community will be left behind because we will have that sharing of resources, that sharing of technology, that updating of mapping, which is essential to the fulfillment of the core mandate of conservation authorities.
Back to the member for Thunder Bay, Superior North.
The minister appears to be breaking something that isn't actually broken, certainly not in northwestern Ontario. Yeah. Our local communities contribute significantly to the management of our Regional Conservation Authority. The government's plan will merge us with 80 other communities in southern Ontario. Talk about a red tape disaster and a crushing of local control. People in the north do not need anyone from southern Ontario telling us how to manage the place where we live. Right on. I ask again, will the Premier stop this amalgamation and keep the LRCA as a standalone conservation authority, yes or no?
Back to the Minister of the Environment.
Madam Speaker, what we're going to do is to continue to consult and listen to all those who have valuable input to give on the reform and amalgamation of conservation authorities. And that's because the current system is not working. Conservation authorities are applying standards inconsistently. They are applying service standards inconsistently, and so it's not working for farmers. It's not working for builders. It's not working for homeowners. It's not working for municipalities. Some have 4 or more conservation authorities with uneven applications of standards and uneven service standards. That must stop. So conservation authorities will fulfill their core mandate better and more effectively and protect Ontario more than ever. We can do both. We can protect the core mandate of conservation authorities while building for tomorrow.
Question. I recognize the member for Don Valley West.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, this week's Auditor General's report showed that once again this government is not in compliance with the Fiscal Sustainability, Transparency and Accountability Act, the Debt Act. The AG found for the 6th year in a row that, quote, the province has not outlined the specific actions it will take to implement the debt burden reduction strategy. Speaker, the Finance Minister brags about one finding of the AG but doesn't dare mention this one. For 6 straight years, the government has broken the debt law. They've added over $100 billion in debt, and the Auditor General says they have no plan to reduce it. Through you, Speaker, to the Finance Minister, will he finally accept the Auditor General's findings that he has no plan to reduce the debt, and will he commit today to coming up with one?
I recognize the Minister of Finance.
Well, I think we're going to have a class in fiscal management, Madam Speaker, because you know this very well, so be careful, V. You know this very well, that we have the lowest debt to GDP in over a decade. That is the fiscal measure. This member knows also very well that our party has gone out every 90 days to tell the people of Ontario how we're doing with their money. And when they were in power, 8 times out of 14, they didn't even go out. They didn't even issue a press release. How's that for disclosure and transparency? And in fact, they increased the debt to GDP. They raised taxes. And guess what? They get credit rating downgrades. This government has cut taxes, increased the economy to $1.2 trillion, and got credit rating upgrades. That's how you do it, Madam Speaker.
Back to the member for Don Valley West.
Speaker, I'll take that as a no. This government says they respect the Auditor General, but they ignore her when she has pointed out every year since 2020 that this government is not in compliance with the debt law. And while the Finance Minister crows about credit rating agency upgrades in 2024, he neglects to mention the downgrade. In 2025, Moody's downgraded the positive outlook it had on the province's rating because the debt is climbing. And this Finance Minister has no plan to change that. Speaker, by 2028, this government will be spending $1.5 billion more, according to their own records, on interest to pay for their rising debt. And you know what they're going to cut? Funding to our justice system, putting community safety at risk. So back to the Finance Minister. Will he admit that his neglect to manage the debt is hurting the people of Ontario?
Back to the Finance Minister.
Well, I think there you have it, Madam Speaker. That's why when they were in power for 15 years, the economy went down and the debt went up. That's what the taxpayers got. They got a raw deal from the previous Liberal government. And coming from the member opposite, she knows much better than that our interest expense to revenue, which is the measure that the credit rating agencies look at, is the lowest in 40 years. We're saving interest on debt as we speak. Madam Speaker, it is the lowest in 40 years, and this is what really matters, including the lowest borrowing costs of any province across the land, so that we are putting more money back into businesses' pockets, consumers' pockets, and not giving it out to bondholders. The member opposite knows that fully well.
Question. I recognize the member for Simcoe Grey.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the energetic Associate Minister of Energy Intensive Industries. Speaker, Ontario's industries like Honda and Pilkington in my riding of Simcoe Grey play a critical role in our economy, driving production, manufacturing, innovation, and the movement of goods across our province. Yet rising global instability, including unjustified trade actions from Donald Trump, is creating unprecedented uncertainty for our industries. Without affordable energy rates to support day-to-day operations, these pressures could lead to lasting negative impacts on our economy. Speaker, our industries need the confidence that their energy costs will remain stable so that they can continue to invest, grow, and compete right here in Ontario. Speaker, can the Associate Minister explain how our government is protecting Ontario by providing affordable energy rates for our industries?
I recognize the Associate Minister of Energy Intensive Industries.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I want to thank the member for his advocacy and the work on behalf of job creators in his riding. He's absolutely right. We know the cost pressures and the Donald Trump tariff threats that industries in the province are facing. It's why we recently announced a massive expansion to the Save on Energy Accelerate program, from $5 million to $15 million in capital project grants for industrial actors who are seeking to reduce their energy costs. We want to help them save money every month on their bills, and one of the ways that we're doing that is providing funds for up to 75% of capital expenditures that will help them reduce their energy consumption, that will help them save on their monthly bills, and will also help the grid as a whole, because we know that the cheapest form of generation is the generation that you don't have to create, the generation that you don't have to build. It's just another way that we're reducing costs for ratepayers every month, and also reducing costs for the system as a whole to keep costs down and protect jobs in the industry.
Back to the member for Simcoe Grey.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Associate Minister for his response and for coming to my riding to meet with one of my manufacturers, Pilkington, to look at how they could stabilize their energy costs.
Wow.
Speaker, Ontarians remember the damage that Liberal policies have caused our energy sector. Industries and ratepayers were left with a tab for reckless policies that made doing business in Ontario next to impossible. With skyrocketing energy bills, a weaker energy grid, and a depleting workforce, too many of our industries were forced to close their doors, like Nakan Starch in my riding, and also Alcoa Wheels. Speaker, we now know that the actions of our government is taking to protect our industries and jobs is working, providing them with the affordable, secure, and reliable energy that they need to thrive. Speaker, can the Associate Minister tell the House how our government is strengthening Ontario's energy system and protecting jobs and workers?
Back to the Associate Minister of Energy Intensive Industries.
And whether it's industries in your constituency to the member or in every community in this province, we are committed to keeping costs down for those businesses. And one of the ways that we've done that is through competitive procurement, competitively recontracting contracts that the Liberals had signed, which were so expensive that it was costing tens of billions of additional dollars for ratepayers at a 30% discount, which has realized some $23 billion in cost savings for the people of this province. It's a massive amount of money that's being saved for ratepayers, but we're not done there. That's why, again, that Accelerate program providing up to $15 million in capital grants is a way that we're able to continue investing in our industries and continue to help them save money for the jobs that they support. We know how crucial that is, and Speaker, when you look at the projects that are being funded, it's such a contrast with the Liberal approach, where they said, no, we're going to chase 300,000 manufacturing jobs out of this province. We're going to cause a 300% increase in hydro rates. That's not our plan. Our plan is driven by competitive procurement. It's driven by a desire to keep costs down and support industries.
Question. I recognize the member for Toronto Centre.
Thank you, Speaker. To the Premier, earlier this year, tenants at 275 Bleecker Street had to be evacuated in the dead of winter because of an e-bike battery explosion. This 21-story high-rise building in St. Jamestown is home to over 500 constituents. It took an exploding e-bike battery to injure 19 people and put everyone's housing at risk. Last month, as temperatures in Toronto dropped below zero, another building in my riding, located at 140 Carlton Street, also had another e-bike battery explosion, and this time displacing 450 constituents. Toronto Fire Chief has called e-bike batteries the largest growing fire safety risk in the city. The number of e-bike battery fires are up over 1,200% since 2020. When will this government recognize e-bike fire hazards and do something about it?
I recognize the Solicitor General.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. We take fire safety very, very seriously in this province, and the member knows that, and I appreciate the question. The Office of the Fire Marshal has been dealing with ensuring that each fire service understands the responsibilities that they need to respond to a lithium-ion battery fire. This is a serious matter, but also, Madam Speaker, that homeowners have a responsibility too, to understand the risks of treating your cell phone or other items with a lithium-ion battery with protection as well. But in the end of the day, when it comes to our fire safety, I want to thank our fire services across the province. I want to thank the fire associations, the OAFC, the OPFFA. These are the frontline people that go every day and respond to fires. What the member spoke about is a serious issue. This government takes it seriously, and I'm very grateful to the Office of the Fire Marshal, who leads by example.
Back to the member for Toronto Centre.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Temperatures are below zero and expected to stay this way for the rest of the winter. The displaced tenants at 140 Carlton had previous warnings to the landlord, and despite those warnings, they addressed that there was overcrowding and unsafe battery storage, and the tenants have said there was no enforcement, no inspection, no follow-up, and no accountability. I tabled a motion calling on the government to introduce new rules to stop the sale of unsafe products and to update the building and fire codes. We cannot accept vague answers. Is this government truly going to prioritize human life and safety? And if so, which month or which day can we expect those new e-bike rules to be brought in? Thank you.
Solicitor General.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, when it comes to taking fire safety seriously, it is our government. It is working with our great Deputy Solicitor General. It is working with the Office of the Fire Marshal. It is listening to our stakeholders with the associations, the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs and the Ontario Professional Firefighters Association. What the member stresses is something that we all have a responsibility to ensure that we take precautions. And I might add, especially in this holiday season, check your fire extinguishers, know where they are. Check to make sure that you have a smoke detector. Make sure you have a plan of escape. God forbid there's a fire. Everybody, especially in the holiday season, should be extra vigilant. But when it comes to fire protection and fire safety, this government will continue to lead by example to help protect Ontario.
Recognize the Government House Leader on a point of order.
Thank